How's everybody? Good. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Major Brock saw the last speech I did. He said I bombed so bad, so he gave me a chance to do another one before I retire. You know, most people are excited, he said, about being one of four. All that means is I had 7 deployments, so I got to joke around the house that my kids don't know me and my wife don't like me. And he is absolutely correct. I was in his captain's career course, and he graded everything on the curve so I could graduate. Thank you so much for that. I have something here that's very important to this speech. I have to do this before we start. Yes, it's very important. You know, the scripture is very important in chapter 5. God's our first creation. God made saints. You know that, right? Everybody knows that. So it would be improper for me not to talk about the saints. Okay? So we want to do a little prayer. God asks us to pray for the fowl of the air, the fish of the sea, and every living thing. So the first thing we're going to do is pray for the fish of the sea. We like to pray for the dolphins. We pray for the fowl of the air, the Atlanta Falcons, the Ravens, and the Eagles. And every living thing, the Bears, the Lions, the Panthers, and the Jaguars. But you know what's so great about God? He even asks us to pray for our enemies. So we like to bow and pray for the Cowboys. Now, I'm going to tell you, as chaplains, we deal in strict confidentiality, and that's very important in our profession. But because we're here and we have so many Cowboy fans, I have to tell you this. When I had a young soldier come to me and he said, "Chaplain, when I die, I want Tony Romo to be my pallbearer." I said, "Why is that, soldier?" He said, "So you can let me down one more time." Now, that's going to get me in real trouble because my boss is a Cowboy fan and my wife, so I'll be on the couch and I'll be fired. Well, I know my time is limited here, so I'm going to tell you like Elizabeth Taylor told her 4th, 5th, and 6th husband, don't get comfortable, I won't be here long. My subject today is, your leadership is a sermon, be careful how you preach it. Whoa, that was deep, but we get that at the chaplain school. Your leadership is a sermon, be careful how you preach it. You know, people ask me all the time, asking, "Hey, what's your leadership model? What do you follow?" Now, I'll be honest with you, I follow Dorothy's leadership model. And you may say that, well, what is that? Well, it's Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz. You guys know Wizard of Oz? Well, it's interesting. Dorothy was swept up in a hurricane and thrown into a leadership position. Her first action on her journey was to unstick a scarecrow from a pole. He had no brains. Her second act of leadership is a tin man. He was paralyzed, and she put oil in his wounds so he could walk. Her third act of leadership was she met the king of the jungle, a lion who had no courage. And she asked all of these 3 young soldiers to walk with her to meet the Wizard of Oz so they can get what they believed they lacked. Now, what's interesting about this is Dorothy had been to all of the IPRs, the MDMPs, and the Command Operations Center. She knew that the Wizard of Oz wasn't magical. She knew that the Wizard of Oz wasn't magical. I want you to hear that. But some people that work for you need a little magical encouragement. You see, leadership allows you to dream for those people who don't have the courage to dream for themselves. Leadership allows you to give courage to those people who never saw any courage in themselves. So when Dorothy took her section to this leader, they believed that he was special. One of the great things about Dorothy, because she's a transformational leader, one of the great things about Dorothy, she never revealed to them that he was an ordinary man. So when they met this leader, he provided the scarecrow with brains that were only pins and needles. But because the leader provided that, he believed now that he was a thinker. This leader also provided the Tin Man with the silk heart that did not pump blood. But the Tin Man, because the leader bestowed upon him the gift of belief, believed that his heart was filled with joy. And he also did the same thing for the king of the jungle. He gave him a portion of courage. You know, when I think about this model, it also makes me reflect on another story that's in the Bible. I got a white on my forehead here, I'm sweating. I'm not Baptist, but I've been told I have some leanings. It makes me think about a parable in the Bible. It was a young man who came to Christ, and he said, "Who is my neighbor?" You see, Christ didn't say your current leader. Christ didn't say find anybody in uniform. He gave him a message in a parable. He said a man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among thieves, who hit him in his head, who robbed him of his raiment, and left him wounded in the road. Now there were three types of leaders that passed by this young soldier. The first leader said, "I'm so busy. I see you hurting. I see your head busted. But I have a meeting to attend." So he walked by on the other side. The second leader came and he saw him in his pain. And he said to himself, "That used to be me. I was that person who needed mentorship. But now I'm on a trajectory for greatness, so somebody else needs to help you." And he too walked by on the other side. But it was the Good Samaritan, the third leader, who stepped in, who brought him in, who put oil in his wounds, bandaged him up, and took him to an innkeeper and said, "If this is not enough, I'll pay you 2 pence. If this is not enough, I'll pay you on your return." Christ asked the young man who did the neighborly thing. You see, I met a man like that. And I tell this story, and I promised that I would tell this story every time I spoke. I met a man like that because I was at my breaking point. I had just received my second Article 15. Of course, I didn't deserve it. And they didn't call me Shabazz. They called me names like chewed up, soup sandwich, ate up. I could have started a food chain with all that food. But at that time, like many of your soldiers out there, I was the scarecrow who didn't think I had any brains. I was the Tin Man, like many of your soldiers out there who didn't believe he had the heart for a mission like this. Like many of your soldiers out there, I was the lion who didn't have any courage to turn myself around after failure, after failure, after failure. But I met a leader, Sergeant Major. I call him my Dorothy. Now he would be mad if I called him Dorothy. So I hope you are taking this. But I met a leader who brought me into his office. You see, if he would have called me in and told me I was worthless, which I expected, I would have agreed with him. If he would have brought me in and said, "Hey, Shabazz, the army would be better without you," I surely would have agreed with him. I had figured that out myself. But when he called me in, he told me something that made me put an arch in my back. He said, be a man for yourself? Won't you be a man for that pretty little wife you have out there and your children after you get off active duty? Now, I couldn't even really hear all that he said, because I was like, is he looking at my wife? I was about to get another Article 15. But for the first time, no, let me digress. I got to say something about my wife here. I asked her, I got pinned on to Lieutenant Colonel here probably a couple of months ago, and I said, hey, babe, did you ever think that in your wildest dreams that I'd be a Lieutenant Colonel? She said, no, because you're not in my wildest dreams. Hey, you have a jam lawyer in here? Oh my God. This is horrible. Yeah, but for the first time, 26 years, I was 26 years old at the time. I was a young PFC, and my sergeant major told me, I believe in you. I believe there's something special about you. You're not done, Shabazz. And because he was my leader, like those aforementioned people, I believed him. I believed him. He sent me to every Soldier of the Month board. He ordered me there. Now, I didn't win any of this. No, I got to be honest. But every board I went to, my confidence was growing. Not only to be a better soldier, but to be a better man for my family and a better husband to that pretty little girl he was talking about. But Sergeant Major prepared me for my calling with the Wizard of Oz. Sergeant Major made me believe in myself when everybody else had written me off. Sergeant Major took me down this yellow brick road where I was stuck. You know, it's interesting. Colin Powell said leadership is about solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day that you have stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence in you or they concluded that you just don't care. In either case, he says, it's a failure